Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Here and Now videocast. On this special episode, I have a good friend and fellow Zimbabwean, Miguel Lemming. Miguel and I know each other from pretty young. Miguel played for Zimbabwe football, and he's held himself in very high esteem. And today we get to hear a little about his story and the purpose and values that drive him. Miguel, thank you for being here. It's a real pleasure to get you on my show, and it's been many years.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yes, it has, man. What a privilege, what a pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you very much for being here. So you're in America now. Would you mind sharing us a little bit about childhood, growing up, why football? You went to a very high level. How did it go?
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. Yeah, wow. When I dust the cobwebs off and try and play it back, it's hard to believe, the journey that football's taken me. But it starts with, a very young, Miguel, 2-3 years old, getting his first soccer ball from his dad, sleeping in bed with his ball. And everywhere I went, I took my ball. And, I think like many children in Zim, we watched soccer on TV. So there was always this, appreciation of English Premier League. And, I just grew up on videos. There was no YouTube back then, so everything was VHS. And thankfully, my dad was part of a great club, Acadia United and Acadia All-Stars, and then Dazzlers, Disasters. So I got a heavy influence from just the Acadia community at the time. A lot of soccer on Saturdays. As I got older, I started going with my dad to games, but as a 5, 6, 7-year-old, I was washing kit. My dad would bring home the kit, and I got to wash, the jerseys, and I'll throw them on. And, you run around in the backyard with, Mooks was one of my favorite players growing up, and Dorman and the other guys, and Zata and Lolo. And, you run on with their jersey, and you kind of imagine yourself in the field, and as time goes on, you start playing with the juniors. So that's where you and I, connected, 7, 8, 9 years old. We're running there, 5-a-side, 6-a-side. Whether it was Hatfield, Postals, Lusitanos, wherever it was, as long as there was a ball, we put a team together and it just got out there. So, yeah, the game really shaped me, from early on. Team spirit, camaraderie, win as a team, lose as a team. So there's certain things and characteristics, I think, as a team player that you learn early on. And that kind of shapes you and molds you. It teaches you how to lose respectfully. And it teaches you grace. It teaches you how to stand up with your brother, come alongside your brother. And, the game taught me a lot of stuff as a junior, not only leadership from the coaches that sacrificed their time. Dorman and them and Uncle Zoe, he didn't have to get out there with my dad and line up cones and get out there at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning with us and, set up all these games at Rufaro or National Sports Stadium. They didn't have to do that, but they did it out of a love. And so, at the time, you don't appreciate it. But now as an adult, I think I look on that as what a sacrifice the generations and giants made so that we could excel, so that I could be in this position to be on, a video conference with you and talk about that future. But then it doesn't end here. Because of that example, I can then impart that onto the next generation. So that was what I learned early on. I'd say before I turned to my teens and you go to high school. High school shaped me a different way. I had a great family. So we were a family unit. And so my family was pretty connected in the community. And I was at Avondale Infant School when I started. Yeah. And one of my best friends, Ainsley Rollo, was at St. Michael's and then Hartman House. So, Aunt Charmaine and my mom got together, and I just wanted to be with some of my mates, so I went to Hartman House. And from there went on to St. George's, college. And school shaped me. I mean, my faith is a big part of me. I respect, all faiths and denominations. I think just a moral compass is always important. Just knowing that, we have something much, much bigger than what this earth has to offer. If this is it, I mean, that's just, there's not a lot here. So yeah, just faith grounded me. We had a Catholic all boys school, but, being an all boys school helped us connect with convent and chase chicks and all that stuff, so so the rivalry that exists in schools and PE and stuff, and all that competition was healthy. I think it shapes you in a different way to be competitive, to want to make something of your life because you've seen the example and role models in our community, but also in society. There were some people that went on to be lawyers. We had justices, but the roads in Arcadia also pointed me to Mr. Tony Croft and all the people that went through Moffat. My granddad on both sides, my mom and my dad's side, and William Abrams on my mother's side, and so the education was just a big part of what I wanted to become. I wanted to make sure that I got to my O levels, got to my A levels, and then looked on to university. So that was something my dad pointed me to. He was always impressing on me. It's not about the soccer ball. It's not about that. That's important. Get out there, be healthy, but it's about that degree. It's about that paper in your back pocket. And I think he knew from his generation, right? 60s, 50s, 60s. He knew what it meant when independence came in 1980. What it meant to have a degree or be educated. And some people, couldn't afford it. So, I know I was blessed to go to something like St. George's. It's a private boys' school. So, with the sweat of my dad's back, worked hard to afford the fees. And I know that there's many schools that, have unique qualities, but Saints for me was a great school. But I had admired all my mates, whether they were PE or some I had friends at Falcon, Plumtree, across the country, played cricket, rugby, and all that. So I just really do treasure my childhood. Yeah, and then from there, Lindsay, I went to South. I wanted to join. A couple of my mates went to Rhodes University, so I was fortunate to get in there, and I was only able to stay there 1 year. It was financially just a crushing blow to my parents. It was very expensive, and this was 96, 97, right? So I went there 97, and I also wanted to play soccer. I really, at that point, I said, what, I want to pursue soccer. So came back to Zim, started working for my dad, and then at Central African Insurance Brokers, I bumped into Carlos. And he said to me, Migs, you should stop playing for clubs that you have to pay to play. You should be getting paid to play. Because at that time I was playing, I think you had to pay membership dues, if you played at ITIs or whatever.
Yes.
But what was great playing at ITIs, I played with Robbie Apple, who I played with him for one season, and he came over to the States on a US soccer scholarship. And I kept in touch with him, but I stayed in Zim, kept working, played for Arcadia. Max was our first coach, and then we went through a couple of different coaches, and each coach was great. Charles Sibanda to Moses Chunga. We had a couple of changes while I was there, but I learned so much from some greats: Brendan Noble, Sparky, Wesley, my pipes, Alan Johnson, AJ, Alan Jones, and learning so much from some of the senior players that came in. We had Claudia Jiripai joined us, Shepard Muradzuqua. So you start seeing these great players come alongside you, and I was fortunate to have them because then I get picked for the national team. Right? So Gibson O'Mello was at the Dynamo's game. I just happened to switch roles with Sheppy that day. I used to play backline, and Shepard swapped out, and I went in the midfield, and I got picked up. So it's one of those things, you always be prepared. One of the pieces of advice I'll say is, prepare est, how they used to say in Latin, right? But be prepared, So you just never know who's watching, any action, any behavior, whether it's social media, whether you bump into somebody on the street, just be kind, but always exercise this thought process that you don't know who's watching, And it just so happened I got called up for camp and joined the U23, Young Warriors, and went on to play, a few games for All Africa qualifiers, Olympic Games, all the way to 2000. So we were one game away from making the Olympics in Sydney. One game. We beat Nigeria here 2-1, and I think we went over there and they brought in all the big guns, Kanu and Okocha and them, and they beat us 4-1. And we didn't go to Sydney. But
okay.
But yeah, so that's a long story of Zimbabwe, and from there, my buddy, as I mentioned earlier, Robbie Apple was in St. Louis, and when I slipped 2 discs in my back, my world changed. Came off the field one game, and I couldn't even move in the club. I walked in the change room. You take the usual cold shower. You come sit down, and my back locked up. I couldn't drive. So, long story short, 8 months of rehab and trying to get back on the field, and I thought, this is it. So I probably need a degree. Let me see if that option's still open. So I messaged my buddy Rob, and he said, yeah, the coach, coach has heard a lot about you, happy to get you on scholarship here in the States. And part of it was I needed rehab. So I went to England. My uncle was over there, Uncle Alistair Abrams,
Yes.
and joined him and tried to get fit in England. He had a local person that gave me acupuncture, got me on the field. He took me for trials. I went up to Huddersfield, and then I flew out to Italy. I actually went to a Serie team, the division team called L'Aquila. They were a feeder team for Juve. And that club wanted to give me a contract, but I didn't have enough caps for Zim. And then same thing with Huddersfield.
You needed a certain amount of caps for Zim?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the time, to get a work permit, I think it was something like you needed 10 caps for the national team.
Okay.
So that kept me from getting that work permit. So I messaged my buddy again, Rob, and I said, I've tried the professional route here, but I think I need a degree, and it seems like a work permit's going to be a challenge, over here in Europe. So January 2001, I flew into St. Louis, met the coach. I had to prove myself to get the scholarship, but played well enough to get a scholarship. It's a whole new world. I arrived in St. Louis. I'd never seen snow in my life. So there was snow on the ground, and I just went, sort of this painful process of trying to get set up all the necessary social security, bank account, driver's license, everything to function in a new country. Like many people know when you immigrate.
Was this on your own, Miguel, or did you have support?
No, I did it on my own. My parents helped me a little bit with the cash to get over and the flight, but started.
No, but I mean, like getting set up and navigating your way. Was it all? You had to do it all on your own.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
And so it's the reason I started this, 10 Toes Africa, because of what I learned when I got here, how I had to get a scholarship. It was fine because I was, again, from Saints, and had the wherewithal. I had Robbie Apple that pointed me to this, but I knew there was so much talent in Zim that easily could come and play in the States, in terms of college. And they just needed that leg up. Like you said, they just needed a little bit of help. If somebody could just point at a young man or girl over here, there was so much opportunity to get that education, a degree. But, did it on my own, so learned a lot, school of the hard knocks. And I was in St. Louis for 6 months before I got transferred out. Well, I actually looked for a transfer to Palm Beach Atlantic University. It's a Division II school in Florida. The weather was just warmer. There was more exposure in Florida. Just weather and the elements seemed more like Zim. Yeah. So I was there for 6 years, got my MBA degree, and then got a job up here in New Jersey. So I know that's a long explanation and a long
No. And I didn't want to interrupt you because I also like I know you, but I don't know all the pieces. So it's great to also get filled in. And it's important that the viewers get to hear the story, and then we can dissect and dive into a few places. And saying that, the thing that I'd like to ask you is, did you ever imagine becoming a professional footballer? And what really shaped you? Because you spoke in the beginning about the values, that community and the elders, the influential people that we both know and grew up around. But you still have to make a choice. Do you believe so? Because we know people from our community that didn't make as good choices, no fault of their own, There's a deeper dynamic to that, which is not for now. But we didn't all make the same choices, even though we had the same community. So what do you feel within you shaped you to make the choices you made? We're going to come back to 10 Toes, which I think is the most amazing thing that I admire you a lot, but that was like really like, wow. Okay. So we'll come back to that. But starting there, what was in you and what were you seeing and feeling and what was shaping you as a person?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to your first question, did I imagine I was going to be, pro footballer and all that? You dream of it. I watched Man United was my team. I started Everton with my dad, and then I changed when Fergie took over. But yeah, I always imagined myself playing at the highest level. I don't know what that was, but I imagined myself at the highest level. I was challenged by a couple of coaches to play at that level. Started with my dad and Uncle Zoe and started at All Stars. It went on to high school. I had Paul Ninjarama was my high school coach, and he said, one day you can be on the national team. I didn't know what he meant by that, right? And then Carly, Max believed in me. If I didn't talk to Max and he didn't push me, I would have still been playing social soccer. So to your point on drive, I think a lot of people get stuck because it's comfortable. I could have just said, I'm going to play high school and that's it. But I took it upon myself to play high school, but also get myself out to Arcadia to go with the juniors. Steve Gwashi was coaching under 17 Zim. I took myself to the tryouts and I said, late Mr. Gwashi, I'm playing at HH, right? But I want to try, and so that's where I met Senior Dunduma and Tostal Gwashi and Blessing Makunikits, some of these guys that at 16, 17, they were, for me, I was watching them at A-Dub or, Prince Edward, but I was at HH. And so there's a drive that takes you to say, you go get this, right? Nobody's going to take you everywhere.
Right.
I see a lot of that entitlement here, or I see a lot of this expectation of handouts, right? I want everything, so I'm always on the take. I think we were raised to, get enough from tools and education and love and a good guidance from your mentors and your leaders. But ultimately, you've been given all those tools to now go make something of yourself. Right? So I think that's the drive. I think that that separates somebody that is an observer or a follower from a leader.
Okay.
I think the penny drops when you say, look, I don't want to just follow and be on the take. I want to take some responsibility and actually lead. And I think that shift in mindset when you become a leader, typically it happens if you become a captain of a team, right? Or if you made a prefect in class, right? There's a different mindset. The lens gets off of criticism, right? So I think as a follower, I was always criticizing until you're in the foot of having to lead.
Yes.
And that I think shaped me to become more of a leader and take control.
Okay. And that leadership role was leading yourself more than anything else, right?
Yes. Absolutely. I think that's a big piece, Lindsay, is like you said, there are people that struggled in our own community because they couldn't lead themselves, right? So they led themselves enough to the club and they got enough in them to get doped, right? And spend a ton of cash on the wrong things, maybe drugs, maybe alcohol. We were just notorious, right? We were painted with this stereotypical brush, right? That, and I'll say goffles, coloreds, whatever the right PC term is now. But, for me, it was a community. For me, the community itself was painted, I think, with a brush, right? That we were only good for certain things. And I think we had to almost elevate ourselves above that stereotype, right? And I say this for any race or religion or community, right? Or demographic. I think sometimes there's a stereotype. And we do this because we've got a human lens, right? Our eye only sees colors. We see shapes and colors.
Yes.
You watch Sesame Street, it's shapes and colors, right? You watch as you grow up, you learn shapes and you learn colors. And sometimes you're the wrong shape and sometimes you're the wrong color. And we've constantly got to figure out how do we fit our shapes into the right holes, right? How do we fit our color into the right color palette, right? And I think that there's stereotypes that come with those colors and shapes. And I think you've got to sometimes rise above that. You've got to not see it as a victim mentality, right? And be victimized by that shape and that color, but use it to your advantage. And to your question, yes, I think that leadership of self comes first. Can you get beyond everyone else and the environmental influences on you and lead yourself through that? Yeah.
That's so powerful. Thank you for that. And, we're talking about because we both know a lot of colored brothers, friends that were so talented,
Yes.
when they had skills beyond measure, but it was that self-leadership that was kind of lacking. And what would you say to any youngsters watching this? Because we've got thousands. You with your mission that you got with 10 Toes, but everywhere else in the world, there's people needing something, a light to switch on. What would you believe is a light that someone watching this could think, I'm in this situation now, the odds are against me, the environment is against me, but I just getting Miguel who's been through this, and there was that point you mentioned where, if I try this, where I start doing this, if it for you personally.
That's I don't take that question lightly, Lindsay, because words are powerful. So a lot of influence comes from words, right? And I would say that every individual inside of themselves has a still small voice, right? You have an inner voice that constantly guides you and navigates. I say this to some people, again, I'm driven by, my faith and I'm grounded in that. So not that this should become sort of a preaching session, but if you don't believe in something, you fall for anything, right?
Absolutely.
One of my favorite chapters is John 10, right? So I won't I won't go into detail, but John 10:10 is,
Miguel, this is your platform. Say whatever
yeah,
you need to say. Your message is powerful to you, and it will resonate with a lot of people. So don't hold back.
thank you, man. Yeah,
Please, just say what you need to say.
thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, so, and that's the point, is to be bold on your messaging, right? To be bold with what you believe. And I stand strongly by my faith, right? And so boldly, you kind of, you stand on those things that have made you principled, those things that give you the moral compass. For me, it has been my faith. And um, I think John 10:10 is a principle I stand by, to get life and life in abundance. I think when you don't take on the challenge of leading yourself, and you don't understand truly what your purpose is in life, it's very difficult to live a life of purpose. So I think what ends up happening is a lot of people don't find their purpose, and they find purpose in other people or other things. They find their purpose in, so and so is doing this, so maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
And so when, if I'm going to encourage a child, as you said, and that's what we try and principle our 10 Toes Africa by, is love, right? So ultimately, there's love in multiple forms, and I won't get into the Greek of eros and phileo love and agape love, which is unconditional. But eros is erotic, right? It's that sensual piece that everyone chases. Human condition is built sometimes on that lustful thinking. And then there's phileo love, which is brotherly love. But then there's agape love, which is unconditional love. It's basically, I'm going to go to the ends of the earth to do whatever it is you need.
Yeah.
And I think that if a child can understand where they fit into those, I think a lot of teenagers battle with that eros. They battle with lustful thoughts, chasing, girls, boys chasing each other, right? Because it's just in our nature. And they might get wrapped up in that too much, so that they get dragged down by it. It's not a bad thing. It's just too much of anything in excess is bad.
Exactly.
So I wrestle with that point of love, right? Find out your balance of that. Find out your balance of brotherly love, phileo love, right? Find out how you can help a brother. And we used to have men for others was our slogan with St. George's, right? But find out how you can help a brother, because I think when you extend beyond yourself, if you serve somebody else, you're not looking at yourself so critically. You're not tied up in depression and some of the hurt that comes with introspectively. Whatever your circumstance, this is not a blame game. You come from whatever circumstance, that's where you're from. But if you dwell on that and internalize that a lot, you can get really caught up in those thoughts, right? So the idea is to share that by brotherly love, right? Serving others. And ultimately that service leads to agape, where, there's no condition to it, right? Unconditional love means I'm going to help my brother without any condition. And, when we started 10 Toes, for example, to talk to the youth, I have Alan Johnson, one of my great buddies. We played in Arcadia, but he is one guy that just demonstrates this absolute overflow of unconditional love. He's out there. He does a lot of coaching. He's put a couple of our 10 Toes tournaments together, and you see that demonstrated, and you see the joy that then multiplies with the number of kids. If he doesn't demonstrate that as a single individual, we wouldn't have 400 plus kids coming to our tournaments. We started with 8 teams. Now we have 26 teams.
Miguel, let's go into 10 Toes, because I think there's a lot of value here, and I really love this, what you're doing. So maybe would you mind giving us a brief description for the viewers to what 10 Toes is about and why you created it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, Lindsay, it's piggybacking off your last question on youth. I think the impact to the youth is most critical. It's when kids are most vulnerable. It's also when kids are most impressionable, right? And if you think back to your impressions, if you really deep-rooted think through high school and maybe junior school, those memories might be repressed, but it was the most informative years of your life, right? I've got a WhatsApp group with all my high school, we were Centennial 96. And so it's just great to be connected, and we all share different views, right? Everyone's got different opinions. That's what makes this world great, right? South Africa was born of a rainbow nation, right? So we wanted to kind of create inside of 10 Toes an environment for education, mentorship, and sport. Those are the 3 pillars we thought, if youth need anything, they need to stay in school, education, because those formative years are so important. Education, get great mentors from either teachers or coaches or parents, where parents are available. We know there's a lot of kids that either have one parent or no parents. And so if we can create a framework where maybe a coach becomes more of that guardian, that would be great. And then ultimately use the gift you've been given. So a lot of these kids are raw talent, right? You've got soccer, like I said, you grew up with squish, a little brown bag wrapped up with elastic bands, and that's your soccer ball, But who's showing you the technique, right? The mechanics. That's where that mentorship comes in. So that was the basis for it, Lindsay, man. We, I was inspired by Gladman Dimbiri, this one gentleman who was in UK. He ran Maningi Football Club out in Parktown.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept prompting, and we were helping a couple of kids come over to the States. We had a kid go to Palm Beach Atlantic. We had another kid, Tino Tenda, who played at Winthrop University in South Carolina. And then 1 year later, he was playing for Manchester
all
City.
Came through your academy, sort of.
Yeah, through finding these young men, boys. And once we started growing the first camp, right, we did a clinic in Glenview.
Mm-hmm.
We actually went to the school, went to the principal, went to the teachers, stood in the classroom and talked them through some of the life lessons of how they need to stay in school. We then went out and did a clinic out on the field, and then we decided to have a tournament. And so we did a 2-day tournament, Saturday, Sunday. We started first at PE. We did it 2 years in a row at PE, and then Alan Johnson, who was working at Harare International School, he decided to set it up there, and so he started running it at Harare International School. And like you and I know, right? When we were youngsters, you didn't want to play at Danny B all the time, right? You wanted to go play at the National Sports Stadium. Because the minute you run on the National Sports Stadium, somehow you get energy, right? Mm-hmm. You get a whole different sense of pride, because you're playing on lawn, you're playing on proper lawn, proper goalposts, everything else. And that's what we see in these kids, man. They come in from very bad conditions sometimes. I mean, if you find a tuft of grass to tee up a soccer ball, you're in luck, right?
You're lucky, yeah.
So we just wanted to give them great playing surface, give them a great environment to thrive and show their talents. And then we try and get some scouts from the US to watch, and we try and get a couple of the coaches, local coaches. We've had some great support from like Carlington, Cherony, and Ushanga has come out a couple of times. Some of these great ballers. Yeah.
And Miguel, what's behind the person to run such an organization? It takes a lot of love and kindness and purpose, right?
Yeah.
We're not all doing this. I even feel a bit guilty. I think, well, why aren't I doing something like that? I love it so much. I mean, what's stopping me? But it takes a special soul, no, to inspire you to do. You're living in America. Yeah. Okay, I know you got Alan supporting you, but you could easily detach. It could be not your problem. You've moved on. You've left them. Why make it your problem?
There's a penny that drops, Lindsay, like I said, where you change from being a follower to a leader, and leadership takes with it a sense of courage. You get an inkling for what you're good at. I think even just this platform and media that you've set up here, I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know how far this is going to go, but you took the initiative to actually set this up. You took the initiative to send out an invitation and just say, let's give it a shot, right? Mm-hmm. And I think half the people get discouraged by what they think the output or outcome is going to be, instead of actually putting the first step forward, right? A journey of 5,000 miles is the first step, right? And I think that some people are so inhibited by fear. They're so inhibited by giving it a shot. So in 2009, 2010, when I was talking to Gladman, and he said, we should try something at Danny B. We should do this. We tried a bunch of things. We changed our logo a couple of times. We changed the website. We used to be called 1010 because I was born on the 10th of October. and you try by trial and error, and you start learning what sticks, what resonates with not you. This is not an emotional thing, because I can like red, you like blue. We've got to come to a consensus. What's good for the whole, right?
Yes. And
I think it's encouragement from great. You cannot go through life alone. I think Creon might have mentioned this in his video, which I loved, is it takes a village, right? It doesn't happen on your own. There's just so much in the way of influence from people that are in your community. You watch those like Creon and I used to watch PE and he was coached there, and they put 100 points on us when we played them with Saints. And I wondered what's so good. But you look at the PE individuals; those kids probably put in 1,000 more hours, maybe than I did in terms of basketball. Right? I was putting my 1,000 hours on the soccer field, and so you start learning, where do you invest your time. Big thing here, like Lindsay. I think if I'm going to put it on one thing, it's switching that leadership lens on, but time management. Time management is critical.
Okay. And in what sense? How do you, what is important about time management for you?
Carving out enough time that you don't ignore and discount your family. So I have 3 kids, I have 3 kids, 3 years and under, right? And I got my wife. and my bride, my better half, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when do I find time to run something like, say, 10 Toes? Well, I find time when she's asleep and the kids are asleep. So I've had to turn 10 Toes Africa on from about 9 to midnight, 10 to midnight. So Monday through Friday, 9 to midnight, that's when I run. And thankfully, Zimbabwe is 6 hours ahead. So Alan and the team over there can message me on WhatsApp and we can coordinate that. 6 a.m. his time, midnight my time, this type of thing, right? The other thing is on weekends, it's valuable that I'm in front of my kids and I'm present. I'm not on my cell phone and I'm not, still running business. They need to, my kids need to recognize, and just personally, I need to recognize taking that break, right? Not a lot of people have that luxury, right? And, some people do have 6 days a week work. Some people have 7 days a week work. So finding that time, that balance, to separate yourself from what you have to do to make money, to survive, right? Finding that time to then point to a passion. And I'd call this, what I'm doing now, a passion. When passion meets opportunity, then you have, something that you find joy in.
Yes. I'm amazed. Sorry, I'm just. I could listen to you the whole evening. I forgot that. Hey, I'm running this. I gotta keep the questions going. Like.
Nice.
Okay. So, do you have a vision for the future, for yourself, your family, 10 Toes? What are you building towards? I love your family values, by the way. Just part of my work is childhood development and the child-parent attachment. And what you were saying was very, very powerful. So thank you for your beliefs as well, not just leading others and yourself, but what you bring into your kids. It's a very fundamental relationship so just want to give you love and respect for that one too. It's very important.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, and I'm fortunate. I know that things happen in relationships. People break up, make up. Some people, they separated by death or by infidelity or whatever that is. And my hope is to be a present dad, present father. Hopefully I don't get caught up in anything that might cause us a break in that relationship that my wife and I swore to marriage, right? The bonds of marriage. So that's important for me, is to listen to that covenant of marriage very clearly, and try and limit from my life anything that's going to separate that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I'd say, so that starts at the home. And if I can do that well with my wife, then it'll trickle down to the kids, right? If they actually see that, just like I think was demonstrated by my mom and dad, and hopefully that becomes an example. And again, like I say, even with 10 Toes, and I'm with the church, like we see relationships that don't go that well, right? And it's not a knock on anyone. It's more just, here's a like you said, a vision for my life, and here's what I'd like to become. But if your life is not that way, doesn't mean you can't fix that, right? You could certainly find somebody that you absolutely love, and you could form that, and it can take off, right? And I think that in terms of that vision, it's probably family front, right? Family first, then the work side, right? So work being what you have to do from a 9 to 5. I really hope I can continue working through my 70s. I don't understand people that retire at 50 and then they just want to go sit on the beach. I feel I'm just a work-driven guy, right? I always want to solve problems and work. And then just be able to serve. If I can serve community, serve a lost generation in the community in Zim that's now in the diaspora. If this video and you need help with anything, Lindsay, if I can be of help, right, in that time management, right, if I'll fit it in.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because I do think there's always room. And if you look at your day and you look at your FaceTime, swipe on your iPhone, and you look at all the time that you spend on different things, you look at Facebook and you see you had 2 extra hours you could have spent maybe on the phone with a kid that I know is 14 years old and needs to talk to you about what's life like overseas, right? So I could certainly set that up for anyone that wants to mentor a child. We want to set that up. There might be children out there that are looking at Europe. We do target the US. I live just down the road from Carly Lloyd, and her coach, James Galanis, great mentor, and he runs New Jersey Soccer. And so I'm trying to help locally, New Jersey Soccer, and see what I could do for youth here, So my vision for that too, from a service and getting so intimate with soccer and knowing all these relationships, is that I can point kids into MLS, into university, into club. I can point them overseas, create partnerships overseas. if somebody's interested. And that would be my vision, to continue with 10 Toes Africa,
Okay.
and be a global scout and help kids as much as I can. Yeah.
Okay. You're so self-serving. It's really admirable to see. And so, what about now? What's here now? What values do you hold dear? What shapes you? What do you keep in check? How do you keep yourself rejuvenated and strong and going? And you got to feel the fire, right?
Oh yeah, every day, right? And I used to be one that went to bed late and slept in late. So you're watching TV till midnight, or you're going to Bardale Village, or you're going to the gig, or doing all those things, right? And then I think there comes a stage where you just can't do that anymore, right? You just tick over the age of 40, and then you just start reevaluating, and you think to yourself, look, I lived 40 years doing this. What do I need to do for the next 40 years, right? So divide your life in half like that, right? Let's say if I've lived my life to 40, what did I accomplish? What legacy have I left? Now I've still got a whole another 40 years ahead of me. What am I going to do, right? So I think that's what drives me, is to say, let me wake up every morning fresh. I do start, I think you might have mentioned it too, but I do start just sort of a peaceful immersion into my faith, and just pray and quiet time, and that kind of kick starts the day, because I think it just brings the whole day into perspective right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I used to live in the rut of my alarm would go off, then I'd check my phone, and then I'm already into the media and whatever, and it just drives me nuts for an hour, and I haven't even started the day. Yeah. So that I found has been calming. It's helpful then to get the kids up, because then they get started 7:30. I'm rocking and rolling. So an early start now leads then to more earlier nights. So I've kind of flipped the tables now.
Yeah.
And just trying to stay active. I play on Sundays, stay in the game. Stay in the game.
Okay. And Miguel, not that I don't believe you change anything about your story, because it would change where you are now. And I can't imagine with a wife and 3 beautiful kids that you want to change that. But if you could give advice to your 16-year-old self, what would you say?
To my 16-year-old self.
What was he facing at that time? And what could you, sitting here now, think, what, young man, just...
get your driver's license. The DMV is not a scary place. And I ended up going to Kadoma to get my driver's license.
You did the one road thing. You did, no way.
16, you're trying to get your license, right? Forget the probs.
one traffic light and one road, right?
That's all it was, man. I'm like, why not? Why not go to Kadoma? Why? It's part of least resistance, right? 16, I think, I would probably stress less. I think when you're 16, you're worried about acne, you're worried about chicks, you're worried about what to wear, the gig to go to, fighting, if there's a bully, a couple of bullies. I think there's so much stress that I remember at 16. And I think to myself, what must that be like, compounded with social media stress now?
Absolutely.
The cyberbullying that happens, the cancel culture that's happening, just the incessant abuse that people exercise through a screen, a digital lens, right? I think we manned up, and it was one-on-one. If you got a problem, we talk, and that's that. Or you pick up the phone and you dial the rotary dial and you talk to somebody, right? Now it's thumbs, boom, boom, boom. Let me just fire off the worst set of construction of the English language to destroy somebody, so I would say, that would probably be something from when I'm 16, is probably stress less. And to anyone that's, now at that age, crossing that, I would say the world ahead of you, has got so much more potential than the stress you put yourself under today. Who by worrying, can add a head to their head is what I always say. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will have its own worries, right? Take care of today. And so, I think that's the big thing that I think drives a lot of teenagers now to suicide. It's so sad, Lindsay, just hearing the suicide rates at the age of 12, at the age of 14, people committing suicide. And I'm thinking, how can your life be so void of purpose, right? Of love, right? Of people coming next to you and finding out what your problems are, that you don't have to end your own life. Why not pour your own life into someone else and serve? What could possibly be going through a 16-year-old's mind that they feel, they need to take it, and that's my biggest concern now. And from a digital side, the pornography world has consumed the young mind. That's another big piece I think that's challenging man and masculinity and men. Is they're just wrapped up in their basement, consumed by either video games or the screen. And so, if I was to point myself back to 16, don't worry about all those things, right? Don't worry about how you look and what you got to wear and trying to fit in. And are you good enough? Are you strong enough? Are you colored enough? I think there's just a constant striving to always want to fit in.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if you've heard this question before, but I love it. What would you say to your future self 15 years from now? So what will you be like, nearly 60?
Okay.
15 years from now?
Okay.
What do you say to that guy?
Oh, wow. I think live life to the fullest. Try and ensure that you're keeping the majors. Don't major on the minors, right? Mm-hmm. Keep the major things. My dad used to say, take care of your pennies because the pounds take care of themselves. Making sure that I think you've got all the little things lined up, but then when that big thing comes, then focus on it. There's an analogy that was put together. You might have seen it on YouTube, but it's rocks and sand. If you fill a jar up right away with sand, and then you try and put rocks in it, you can't fit all the rocks.
Yeah.
But if you put all the rocks inside first, and then you pour the sand around the rocks, you can fit everything into it. Mm-hmm. So I would probably look, to that life to say, have I lived a life where I've put a whole lot of rocks in here, and now I'm just filling it in with sand, right? Mm-hmm. Making sure I can live a whole and fulfilled, fruitful life. A lot of those rocks include, my faith, my family, my finances, my fellowship and sharing and service. And then the other stuff just comes in loosely, where I like to go for lunch or dinner and all these little things and things that I think consume our time a lot more than they should.
Yes.
They're the little things that I think should just kind of color in your life.
And valuable. So I love what you're saying, and I'm so glad that I cornered you down and I got you. Miguel, I was talking to Creon, and I noticed a pattern, and I don't know if it's I'm going to stick to the color community because that's what we're doing here. We're trying to bring a message to the color community, and it's for everybody. And like you said earlier, that communities are everywhere and everybody's got similar struggles. But I'd like you to give yourself a little bit more credit. Everything I hear you talk about is giving, but my brother, it takes a lot to do what you're doing and see the world the way you're seeing it, because you acknowledge that you could have made different choices. You could have chosen different paths. You could have been more resentful, the injury, the things that didn't work out, trying to make it on your own. There's a lot of different choices that you could have made that could have made you a different man sitting here today, right? And my little gift to you, and I saw this with Creon too, and he's like, no way, guys, come on. You're doing a great thing. At least acknowledge yourself a little bit, because it'll rejuvenate you so much more. And I mean, I don't think you'll ever be able to stop being a great leader and caring for others. But I'd like, if you can, do this for me. Just give yourself a little bit of acknowledgement, because you're doing amazing things. Just the way you sit here and talk and your views on life, considering your journey, I give you so much love and respect for what you're doing. And I'd like you to give yourself some, after this, or have a moment where you're just like, I did great. I'm a good man.
Thanks, Lindsay. Wow.
If you don't do that already.
I'm humbled by that. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if I take time sometimes to stop and and think and just I reflect a lot in the mornings on what I can do, right? What more can I do, right? But I appreciate what you're saying. Kind of.
But not touch on what you've done and who you are, right?
Yeah, right.
So if you can, just give yourself a few minutes. Just say, you know what? Yeah. I turned out to be all right, man.
As did you, man. As did you, man.
You.
This is so great. Here we are on a digital platform, and yet I feel like I'm in the same room with you, and yet we grew up decades ago, together,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely.
And if we shared, you know, if you combine the amount of minutes and hours we spent, we probably didn't spend more than like a week, right? If you look at the hours and
Yes.
minutes, it's kind of like somebody says to me, what's, you know, how long does a midfielder, you know, how long does a midfielder touch the ball on the field, right? You know, oh, the game's 90 minutes, midfielder must touch the ball for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Average midfield is touching the ball for 2 to 3 minutes, right? So what are you doing for the rest of the game? For 88 minutes, it's either noise or it's in your own head, you know, of where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do. Your role and actively participating when you're on the ball is only a couple of minutes. And so you and I might have interacted that couple of minutes, and yet it's set up a whole game for us, right? Here we are online talking to each other. So those minutes and seconds, I think, are so precious, man. And I appreciate you telling me to reflect for a couple of minutes, and I'll ask you to do the same, Lindsay. You know, for you to set this up, huge impact. You know, I don't know how far this is going to go. Hopefully, it goes very far, and I hope it continues. I hope it multiplies.
I won't stop. Like you're not stopping, I won't stop.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as you're going, I'm going.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. One last thing. Is there anything you'd like to say about 10 Toes or yourself that you just feel is important, that you believe in strongly, or like to, just a last message, you know?
Thanks. Ooh, how do I close? How do I get off? You know, I would just encourage each person to individually start leading, you know, your life, what you can control. You know, here's the thing. Every mistake you've ever made in your life, only one person has been there, right? So every time something's gone wrong, there's only one person that's been there, yourself, right? So at the age of 2, whatever happened, you were there. At the age of 10, at the age of 20, at the age of 30, at the age of 60, I myself am going to be there. I can't blame anyone else around me. And I think a lot of times we want to lay blame on all these things, but our lives are connected to so many other lives, and yet we're responsible for the life that we have in the time that we have. So yeah, I would just say, you know, take ownership and leadership for your life. You know, try and find a moral compass that points you into your purpose. And that would really be something I hope for everyone, to find that purpose and joy, because then it does give you purpose. It gives you something to wake up for every morning, and there's just not enough time in the day because you're so hungry to get something accomplished that day. If you find your day dragging, I would search even deeper then for that purpose.
Yeah. And what's that word you use for brotherly love? The Greek word, what is it?
Phileo. Yeah, phileo.
Phileo
is brother.
My brother, yeah. I wish you phileo love in
Thanks.
all you do.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
I'm going to keep going, and I'd like to have you back, maybe with Creon and just a little round table thing in the near future. But for now, phileo love to you, your family, and your mission, and keep up the good work. You're doing so great.
Thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate this opportunity. Really do.
Thanks,
I look forward to sitting around with everyone, bringing back the diaspora. And
I'm going to pull that together. So
that'll be amazing.
We'll have a round table, some jokes and some stories and history.
Yeah.
So, okay.
That'll be great.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, you know, here's one thing. I'll ask you this question. Do you feel there's a lot of pressure on having an accent?
On having an accent?
On having an accent. You know, in all these countries that I've lived and moved, I feel like my accent's constantly changed. It's constantly evolved, right? But how much pressure is placed on an accent? How much do you sense is placed on an accent? That's my question to you.
I don't know. That's a good question. Do you want me to answer that now, or is this a takeaway?
Takeaway for the round table.
Yours hasn't changed. You sound exactly from what I remember you. So I maybe.
Oh, is that, yeah.
You know, you haven't changed. I don't hear any American or no English. Not so. Nice. Yeah. But I guess we try and fit in, right, wherever we go. So if the accent does change, we're just trying to fit into an environment.
Yeah.
To some extent.
You know, when I saw it come to life for me, Lindsay, was Edgar Langerfeld. I don't know if you ever watched Edgar Langerfeld, but he could do the impersonation of every accent you could think of. And now you see the comedian Trevor Noah, right? So I often get compared to Trevor Noah. And it's easy in the States because then I can kind of, you know, just explain, yep, you know, mixed race, and this is what we call colored, because in the States, colored is not colored, right? It's black, white, you know. Yeah. And there's certain levels of color too, right? Am I black enough? Am I colored enough? Am I Indian enough? You know, so I think a lot of people get caught up in that, trying to fit into being whatever that is that you feel your stereotype is. And I think a lot of times people put pressure on themselves, even for an accent. You know, you could be in North London and South London, and it's completely different, right?
Yes.
You can be in the north of the US and south of the US, and it's completely different. People get wrapped up with a Boston accent. It's now park the car. I need to go park the car, right?
Yeah.
You go from Boston, you go to the south, and it's why are you doing that? You know, it's very southern. And with that tone comes an impression. You know, that lens I told you, shapes and colors, but I think there's also a sound element, you know?
Yeah.
And so, the reason I say that, I think some people's words carry with it tone and accent, and that can also change the shape of a message, you know, messaging, how it's received.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a roundtable discussion, and I'd love to hear opinions on accent.
That's a nice way to end, because when you talk about accents touching people differently, this thing that we're doing, it will touch the people that we wanted to touch differently, because they'll resonate with our accent, right?
Our accent, because we colored, and we come together because of that, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, and even just slang like goffalones and, you know, just everything that, you know, we grew up with, right? I feel that's obviously a generation that can never be put back together. Once that, you know, it's like pulling the cork out of a wine bottle. You can never put that cork back in the same way. It's gone. But I think by doing what you're doing, you're gonna maintain and retain some of this inherited culture that we have, where we have the accent, we have the slang terms, we have, you know, just even the different dialects from skies. You know, when you go to Bulawayo versus Florida in Mutare versus, you know, Harare, we even had just that dynamic, you know, let alone my family in Cape Town, you know, and all that. So I just really think this is incredible what you're doing. I think that retention of culture and accent and some of that stuff has to happen. Obviously, you can't use all the slang terms when you get into a business environment and start wanting to lead effectively, because it matters, right? But I love what you're doing here, man. Congrats, and thanks for the invite. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
A lot. Thank you so much. So, thanks very much, and take care of you, my brother.
You got it, brother. Take care.
Thank you.
Much love. Cheers.